Dennis Rodman believed he was free of financial worry while enjoying his retirement from pro basketball. Reality TV appearances and festival DJ gigs kept the money coming in. However, in 2012, he was threatened with contempt of court for not paying his child support. Lawyers brought up Rodman's spending habits and combed through his financial records. He was asked about several Victoria's Secret purchases, and he told the court that he had never been there. Someone was spending plenty of Dennis Rodman's money, and it wasn't him. Peggy Ann Fulford had been called a larger-than-life figure who can make anyone feel like $1 million, which is good considering she was stealing way more than that from her clients. Peggy told them whatever they needed to hear to make them feel comfortable handing over control of their finances. Now, financial managers for athletes and celebrities do exist. They help manage their clients' money by paying bills, investing, and controlling their spending habits. 22-year-old rookies with a few $1 million in their pockets don't often make the best financial decisions with it. She started by weaving a web of fake credentials. According to her phony resume, she studied at Harvard Law and Harvard Business School. She made millions on Wall Street and was sitting on a hefty sum of money. Peggy weaved this false version of herself. She came off as the hero these athletes needed. Little did they know, she was pulling them like flies into her web. As a so-called millionaire, Peggy knew how important it is to protect your fortune. She had already made it. All she wanted to do was help. She proved this by doing the work pro bono, calling her clients family and saying, "That's what you do for family." Her family-first mentality lured victims into a false sense of security, making them perfect for her predatory scam. The more money you're playing with, the more attention you attract. Peggy seemed unworried about this old adage and, in hindsight, played her game rather recklessly. However, discrepancies eventually brought her to the attention of the FBI. Under their scrutiny, her haphazard lies began to reveal themselves. Unfortunately, it took the authorities a long time to build a case against her. During this time, she built an extensive list of victims full of professional athletes that saw her as their friend. Some people looked to her like the adopted mother of their families. By the time her crimes were brought to light, she had stolen millions from stars like Dennis Rodman and Ricky Williams. Investigators and victims teamed up to expose Peggy for the fraud she is. She never studied at Harvard, let alone graduated. She was never sitting on millions in Wall Street earnings either. Her lavish lifestyle was funded by money stolen from her A-list clients. But her web was so tightly spun that she fooled the public for a long time. BET even ordered a pilot episode for a reality TV show called The Peggy Show. Peggy was so entangled in her deception that she seemed to be fooling herself. She purchased a mansion in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and enjoyed a lifestyle filled with big clients and giant parties. Everything was on the up for Peggy, and the next logical move was a reality TV show to document it all. Peggy's life fit the mold for reality TV, especially at the genre's height in 2011. The Kardashians and the Real Housewives dominated the reality TV game, and Peggy wanted a piece of the action. She was a powerful woman who knew what she wanted and didn't let anyone get in her way. A pitch document said the show would be named after its star, calling it The Peggy Show. After a bit of bouncing around, the BET network paid for a pilot episode. This reality TV show was to be about Peggy and her sports management empire. With 31 professional athletes under her wing, nobody disputed her empire at the time. The show would document her position as CEO of King Management Group, the financial advisory and management company she founded. There would be recurring characters like family members and famous clients. Her brother Elkin Jr. would be something of a co-star. He was close with Dennis Rodman and even accompanied him on his now famous trip to North Korea. The show would portray her as more than just a financial advisor and instead focus on Mama Peggy, as her clients would often call her. Dennis Rodman is one of the most well-known names in basketball. He played on the famous 90s Bulls with legends such as Scottie Pippen and Michael Jordan. Rodman also became known for his antics as he was constantly in the news for one thing or another for his lifestyle. Rodman was introduced to Peggy in the mid-2000s after he had already retired from basketball. He was still pulling in over $1 million per year, using his celebrity making money from things such as guest appearances. Rodman's lavish life and overflowing bank account made him a perfect target for Peggy's scam. Peggy told him she was already wealthy and just wanted to protect his money. Rodman, just like all the others, fell for it. He trusted and respected her so much that he thanked her during his 2011 Hall of Fame speech. However, all this love clouded his judgment. When red flags started popping up, he never considered it could be her. Peggy, now on the defensive, convinced him that his spending habits were the problem. Ever brave, she used this opportunity to gain more control. Peggy seized Rodman's account and cut off access to his debit card, saying that he couldn't control himself or his spending. Then, per the beginning of our story, used it to go on a Victoria's Secret shopping spree. Rodman wasn't the first professional athlete Peggy had ensnared. Ricky Williams, an NFL star, running back, and Heisman Trophy winner, met Peggy in 1999 after having an interior decorator visit his home. He was to be on an episode of MTV Cribs, so he needed a touch-up to his place. The decorator brought along a friend named Peggy. She and Ricky became like family, or so he thought. She kept up her illusion quite well, selling him the same story she gave everyone. She became a close family friend, throwing a baby shower for his wife, and even drove her to the hospital when it came time to have the baby. She also hosted their wedding reception where Rodman made an appearance. Peggy offered to take care of the Williams' finances and invest on their behalf. You can argue that meeting Williams was the best thing that ever happened for Peggy's scam. She was introduced to dozens of NFL and NBA stars in the market for a professional money manager through him. For Peggy, it was like shooting fish in a barrel as she gathered more and more contacts. However, Kristen Williams, Ricky's wife, would prove to be Peggy's downfall. In 2012, Ricky Williams' wife, Kristen Barnes, noticed their car had been repossessed. Then letters started coming in from the IRS claiming Ricky owed money in back taxes. Baffled, the couple contacted Peggy to ask for an explanation. As their money manager, Peggy was supposed to be making their car payments and paying their taxes. After receiving a second letter saying that Ricky owed $375,000 in unpaid taxes and interest, Kristen became suspicious of Peggy. So she asked a friend that went to Harvard to check the alumni for Peggy Fulford. Lo and behold, nobody named Peggy Fulford ever went to Harvard. Kristen kept putting the pieces together. She contacted the Charles Schwab Corporation where Peggy supposedly invested their money, but no funds were found in their name. She even called her bank to find that she'd been barred from accessing her account. The bank manager suggested she get a lawyer. They were missing almost $5 million and were devastated to learn that Peggy had been playing them the whole time. Kristen took that bank manager's advice and filed a civil suit against Peggy. When in court, the family seemed less angry and more hurt by what happened. Ricky even said to the judge, "For me, I'm curious, where the money is." They just wanted their money back, shocked by the reality that had washed over them. Now that the lawsuit was filed and big money was in play, the FBI got involved. Peggy Fulford had built a house out of lies, and FBI agent Jim Hawkins was there to tear it down. When dealing with a lifelong con artist, even getting their name right can be a challenge. Peggy had multiple aliases like Peggy King, Peggy Berard, and Peggy Simpson, mostly stemming from her previous marriages. However, her name wasn't the only thing she lied about, and as Hawkins dug, he discovered more and more. Peggy was running over 85 bank accounts and using them to bounce money around. She also started shell corporations and celebrities' names to launder her stolen money. Company names included the Dennis Rodman Group LLC, Dennis Rodman Group and Associates LLC, and Dennis Rodman Inc. In Peggy's thick web of lies, there is one that nobody could find a reason behind. Peggy lied about Elkin Jr. being her little brother. He was actually her son. Peggy needed her victims to trust her, and she did so by employing a bag of psychological tricks. She projected confidence and power to make her clients believe she knew how to protect their money. Peggy pegged herself as the hero who'd come to save the day, and money management was her superpower. Peggy worked for free because her clients were her family. She threw parties, she hosted weddings, she even drove soon-to-be and new mothers to and from the hospital. We can picture her holding Kristen Barnes' hand as she delivered her first child, assuring her that everything's gonna be all right. Mama Peggy is here. She needed to distract her clients for her con to work, and she did so by becoming their friends. Peggy's con was dependent on her clients loving her, and she was good at making that happen. 2013, shortly after Dennis Rodman claimed not to be an avid Victoria's Secret shopper, Peggy's scam circled the drain. She filed for bankruptcy to try and keep some property from being foreclosed. All of her luxury items were seized, and the FBI was hot on her trail. All of her lies came back to bite her in the end. A $300,000 transfer made in 2013 was discovered. The money came from the Wells Fargo account of Lex Hillard, a client and NFL fullback. The money was used to close on a half-acre plot of land in Houston, Texas. The new owner of that land? Peggy. That transfer put her in Agent Hawkins' backyard. Dennis Rodman fired Peggy in a letter and condemned her for using his name for the shell companies. After a 2016 FBI interview, Hawkins was satisfied with the evidence he'd collected. Along with 2 other agents, he knocked on her door and led Mama Peggy out in handcuffs. As they walked her out, they discovered one last con, a check for $200,000. She had told a doctor that she was planning to turn an old high school into an assisted care facility. When the owners of the property were contacted, they had never heard of Peggy. With all the evidence gathered against her, Peggy's court case was open and shut. The lifelong swindler had to stand across from her victims and listen to the pain she caused them. Peggy pleaded guilty, and the judge sentenced her to 10 years behind bars. She was also ordered to pay $5 million in restitution to the people she conned. Unfortunately, people will always target athletes for their wealth. There were over $600 million in recorded losses to fraud between 2004 and 2014 for professional athletes. San Antonio Spurs star Tim Duncan found out firsthand how these scammers come in all shapes, sizes, and suits. He lost more than $20 million to a shady financial advisor that used him to pay debts. However, he is not alone in his struggles. Mark Sanchez and 2 other baseball players lost $30 million to a scammer claiming to be a devout Christian with a mind for charity. It seems like many athletes get their money young and have no idea what to do with it, leaving them vulnerable to swindlers like Peggy. They will always be seen as targets due to their high wealth and low experience. Education and helpful advice from veterans of their sport could help prevent them from being preyed upon. Click here to watch one of these next videos.